Welcome to Nepal Now. My name is Marty Logan. Deepak Rauniyar still feels queasy when he remembers the racism he faced growing up in Udaipur district in eastern Nepal. As one of few dark-skinned kids in the community whose mother tongue was not Nepali, he was taunted by children and singled out for beatings by his headmaster. But as a college student looking for part-time work, he soon discovered that journalism gave him the power to uncover the discrimination that pervaded life in the southern Madhesh region. Deepak later honed those skills, traveling the country, writing radio dramas for BBC Media Action. In 2010, Deepak and his wife, actress and filmmaker Asha Magrati, decided it was time to start telling stories from their own point of view, with film as their medium. Deepak left his job and the couple launched Addy Productions. Their first feature film followed in 2012, Highway, a road movie of sorts about the roadblocks of life in post-conflict Nepal. Highway marked the first time a Nepali director had premiered at an international film festival. In this case, the Berlin International Film Festival. 4 years later, Addy released its most celebrated film yet, Seto Surya, or White Sun, the story of a village and its people struggling with the legacy of the Maoist conflict. White Sun was Nepal's official selection for the 90th Academy Awards Best Foreign Language Film and took home prizes at the Venice, Singapore, and Palm Springs film festivals. The New York Times has called Deepak one of the 9 new directors you need to watch. Today, Deepak and Asha live in New York City, where they are finalizing the script of their next project, tentatively called The Sky Is Mine. It tells the story of a fair-skinned female police officer assigned to the Madhesh in the midst of communal tensions that would soon ignite. Like all their movies, this one is inspired by personal experience, explains Deepak, adding that telling the couple's most personal story yet can be a frightening prospect. If you enjoy this episode, please like, follow, or subscribe to Nepal Now on your podcast player. If you use Apple Podcasts, give us a rating. You can let us know what you think of the show via social media or send me an email at martylogan, martylogan.net. And now, filmmaker Deepak Rauniyar. Hi, Deepak. Welcome to the podcast. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you, Marty. Thank you for this opportunity. Nice to talk to you.
So you're based in New York City. You've been there a while now, I think, right?
Yeah, it's been around 9 years that we started to come and do back and forth. This time, I think we have been. It's about a year now that we haven't been back to Nepal.
Is that because of COVID? Were you planning a trip when all of this started to happen?
Yeah, we were planning to shoot a film in fall, and so we were getting ready about it. Also, we had to come earlier to start pre-production, but because of COVID, the shoot has now been pushed for maybe at least summer next year. So we're staying here, writing another film, and doing other works in the meantime.
Okay, yes. I was going to ask you about that actually. This is The Sky Is Mine. That's the next feature, right?
Yeah, that's the next feature.
Okay, yeah. And I was wondering if you had already shot it because I knew it was coming up fairly soon. But I'll ask you a little bit more about that in a while. But how have things been in New York? I mean, we've been reading a lot about New York with COVID-19. How has it been for you?
The world totally looks different now. Like it's a new normal. Like New York, like something like in Nepal, you would have seen people wearing the mask and walking in the street. It was usual thing. But here in New York, a couple of months ago, we could have imagined. But it's a new normal now. Like I was in Berlin in February, where like we were just hearing about the cases from Italy, and people had started to get sick. And by the time I arrived here, border was getting closed, and things started to get crazy. We live here in almost Jackson Heights in Queens, which became New York was the epicenter, and this became the epicenter of the epicenter. So it was really scary around like first beginning couple of weeks, and the hospitals were packed. We just realized one of staff in our building died, and our neighbor was sick, so he was coughing all the time. So it was really like that anxious time. But New York has really recovered well right now. The death rate has come to zero, and daily life is getting back to normal here. But the country is still suffering a lot. I'm more worried about the family than us, than more worried about the family in Nepal. My parents are in Udaipur. My brother is in Kathmandu. My father-in-law is in Morang, and father-in-law actually is in 80s, and we're scared like if he gets sick, because the way, especially in the eastern Nepal, the hospital refuse the patients, and the dark side of society has exposed by COVID in Nepal. Really worried like he wouldn't even get the hospital, or anyone in family get sick. They wouldn't even get the hospitals and treatment that needed, and that would really affect. And we couldn't travel at that time, so that scares us.
Yeah, it's strange here. It is like you said. It's a lot of negative things have happened. Although luckily, there still hasn't been a big outbreak. There have been some small outbreaks, including in Udaipur district where your family is. Being in Nepal, we've been waiting for it and waiting for it, and India is much worse, and the south of the country where Udaipur district is in the Tarai. That's been harder hit than up here in Kathmandu, but still, it's really uncertain what's going to happen here. The lockdown's lifted, but I think a lot of people are still quite anxious about what could happen.
Yeah, I can understand that. I totally feel it, especially in Nepal. We were lucky that it didn't hit so hard like it hit New York, or it hit some of the European countries, Spain or Italy. Nepal, I don't think they are ready. Like a lot of hospitals don't even accept any patients who has a fever. I feel really scared about it, thinking about family and friends that we have in Nepal.
Yeah, it's I think many of us here are still basically crossing our fingers and just hoping it doesn't get worse before it gets better. Nepal has kind of escaped. Let's hope it can stay that way. I hope your family and friends are all safe and healthy, and that you get to make it here sometime soon. So let's shift gears a little bit and start talking about more about you and your career. Um, and I must say that you and I know each other also. Before doing this, we've met a few times, and so I consider you a friend as well. But I've also gone and done some research. I know that you worked for a few years with BBC Media Action, creating radio dramas, and you were quite successful. You had a successful team, and then you moved on to, if I'm not mistaken, some newspaper work, and you were doing film reviews. And I think at one point you said that you had enough filmmakers come to you who were maybe upset with the criticisms that you gave them and challenged you to do something better than they could do. And at some point you just said, okay, I have to take up that challenge. And you just started, you got into it with your first movie. What I would like to ask you about, and I haven't seen it discussed in any other interview, is to talk a little bit about your earlier years. So, did you grow up in Udaipur? Did you grow up in Saptari? For some reason, I think Saptari.
Saptari, I was born in Saptari, and my parents really moved to Udaipur for my father, especially, moved to Udaipur for business purposes because we were poor. I think my grandfather was rich. I think he was very rich man, but he died. when my father was only 6 months old, and by the time he grew up, he didn't even get to school, so he had a really difficult year, problem with brother and sisters, and so he really made his life in Udaipur. So I was really little when we moved to Udaipur, and that is Nepali speaking community around. I come from Maithili speaking community, looking dark. It was hard growing up. Like the racism was the one thing that I learned very when I was very little in childhood, and I grew up that on that society, knowing like how hard it is to learn the different language and communicate with someone and not being able to look the same the other looks. Now, Udaipur is actually more like a Chitwan, like we call Bhitri Madhesh in Nepal, the inner Tarai. So Udaipur has mountains. Udaipur is after what you call in Charkosejari, that forest that we have.
No,
And it's
Chure. I think
Chure,
Chure.
yeah, yeah. After Udaipur, the places we were living were crossing after Chure, so it's beyond like Chure. It's kind of foothill of Mahabharat mountain. Yeah,
Maybe.
Udaipur is a particularly like more a hill community. Madhesis are very little, and we were only one of the early family that had moved there. So though we had a really supportive community and family that were hosting us, as a child growing up in a school where you no one it looks like you and no one speaks your language, I started to get bullied from very early, and that was when I started to learn about racism and how things are in Nepal. Especially that was the time when I think, if I remember correctly, like we were still in panchayat, right? I'm from 78, so and even after the panchayat has ended, we are like every village used to have a mukhias, like this village chief, who would lead the villages, and they were brutal, like they were really uh, one kind of like dictators. So they could beat you, and you can do nothing about it. You have always to be able to welcome them in your home. So I grew up in that environment, one of the environment that really inspired me later to come into cinema. But I did not have exposure of cinema, or I had not been to cinemas until I was 13 years old. I was 13 when I was filmed in a cinema for first time.
So you're living under this system which is already, as you said, quite authoritarian, and then on top of it, you're being bullied because you look different and you speak differently than other kids. I mean, how did you deal with that personally? Did you try to hide from people? Did you get into fights? How would you react?
Like I was born in 1978, so I think I was there by 5 years old or 7 years old. So I think a couple years before the panchayat ended. That time, like the first early year, like we were living in a house of family. Their daughter also went to school with me, so she was very protective of me. So she would get into fight for me, and I still remember a couple events and that time, which like she complained to her father. Her father was quite influential man, and he complained to teacher and how teacher beat other children. But that didn't end. Like she moved to different school, to different town. She was, I think, sent away for the town in the school. So I then again became alone. Growing up, and bullied was not only my colleagues or classmates. One of the person I really remember, I still can't forget, is my headmaster, who was Madheshi Yadav from Sirah somewhere. He would bully me more than anyone else. And I think now, think about it now, would feel like that he didn't have anyone else to treat like that. Maybe he was oppressed. a situation like that, and he would find me as a scapegoat. And that really pushed me like to not to sit in the first bench, always trying to find the height between the classroom, somewhere in middle, so he cannot catch me, because he would come and catch my stomach and pull me and pull my hair, call me a name. So it was real. Like, I think even thinking about it makes me like don't want to talk about something like that right now. But I think those are the images that never went away. And it's not the family like in the West, right? You can come and complain to your family, and family would come to fight for you. In Nepal, it's still the family. For family, teachers are the god. Family do not really talk to teachers, do not really care or visit children's school, especially not in the villages. They don't know about it, anything about it. They send his children to his school, and they think they're doing that's their responsibility, and responsibility is gone after that. It's not. I think the awareness has come a bit more in city, but not in the villages still.
Right. So you don't question authority, and authority includes teachers who, like you said, are treated like gods, and they can do no wrong because they're supposedly making you into a better educated person, right?
Yeah, and I think it still happens even in Kathmandu. I hear time and again.
Right. So, is this? Do you think you were developing at this time the idea that you wanted to kind of change things so this wouldn't happen to someone else? Like you saw this personal injustice, racism. Did you start to think that you needed to do something to end this in society? I'm just thinking how you ended up with BBC Media Action doing, radio dramas that dealt with various social issues.
I don't know. Like, I think I would be lying if I said like as a child I was thinking about all these things, big thing, like if I want to change or something. But maybe it was in my conscious mind. But I think it's only it started to develop when I came to college in Viratnagar, and I had to find a part-time job at least to support myself going to school. And only thing I could find was inspired by my friend that I started write for newspapers. And that's kind of like, for first time I realized how journalism has power. Things started change even in my village, because I soon became the reporter for Nepal, Radio Nepal. I did. I was a stringer for National Daily, and I started to write about it, and I started to write about even in about my villages and the situation that they were happening there. And I remember things shifting, like remember feeling that power, feeling that power of like bringing discussion. That's how I get into media, and that's how I really was felt that media was something that, or maybe the only thing that can empower me, or that I can tell my side of the story, I can provoke conversation, I can question the society that I live in.
Right. Okay. Do you happen to remember any example of, a report that you did on a particular topic that might have had some impact, like as you were describing?
Uh, One of the topic was there was a doctor in our village who was a Madheshi or Indian. Madhesh is from Nepal, or someone from India.
Sorry, let me just interrupt again. And so just to say that Madhesh is a part of the region of Nepal, like the southern part. It's also known as Tarai, but Madhesh is also the culture. I think it's Tarai is kind of the geography. Madhesh is the culture, and Madheshi are people who come from that area. Is that basically right?
Yeah, I think Tara is what it means, the land.
Right.
But
Okay.
from the early age, like even Visheshwar Prasad Koirala or anyone that would write, talk about it, they always said that I'm going to Madhesh. They never said I'm going to Tarai. I think it has become now more political because Madhesis came on the street and demanding the right to be called Madhesis. or they call their area Madhesh. So now the Hill politics especially says that there is no Madhesh, and so not to allow the power. Uh, but I think it's always been Madhesh, and being Madhesh is. So yeah, I was saying. So yeah, so I was saying that one of the report I had made was like how the doctor was forced to leave the village by the elites there. So and that report came out and did really like had created like I even get threatened, but same time I also felt that I had power against the village elite, village these mukhias who used to rule the village. And I think we started also having several different conversations, and even like being on the radio itself, people started to talk about like, oh, he's a journalist and he can report it. So that itself like was started to shift power, but it didn't mean that nothing else happened after that. There's several other incidents happened. Like my father was arrested for no reason, sent to the district. Uh, there a lot of little details kept happening, but I at least felt like love with media and felt that avenue that I can express myself. I can tell my side of the story.
Right. And so some of these incidents, or most of these incidents, like the one with your father, would have been people from the so-called um, hill castes, or the white lighter skinned people taking it out, or doing something against Madheshi darker skinned people. Is that often how it happened?
It was mixed. Like it's Nepal, like, like it's hard to separate poor and rich, and Madhesis are hill, or sometimes it's caste or gender. There's tons of mixed up. So one way it could also see happening in other part of country is only because it was rich doing something for poor, or it could be hill powerful hill men doing something against Madhesis. Like incident, my father, someone asked for. We used to have a horse that I had really deep relationship with, and one night my my neighbor's baby horse came to our home, and somehow when he returned, he died.
Sorry, who
And
died?
the baby horse, what do you call
Eh,
the yeah,
the foal.
yeah.
Okay,
So first he came to our home, like what do you call the place that horse is kept? We call
stable.
tabela, stable.
Stable.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it came to our our house near and went back, and somehow in their home somehow he was found dead next day. So it get mixed up with like a guy who had asked for horse the earlier day, now making who has no relationship with this dying on a horse anything, makes a complaint. They come together to file a complaint about my father killing that horse, and he getting arrested and sent out to district, which is like at least 10-hour walk from there. Not even the local police station, but he's been sent to the district police. So I had to come from Kathmandu, gather everyone, and go through the process. There was no proof that he was involved in killing and anything. It was only to show the village's power that, or the elite's power that if you don't deny what we asked for, see how we can punish you.
Okay. Okay. So
If
it
it makes sense, yeah, yeah.
no, it does. And so as a journalist, it sounds like you had lots of opportunities to talk about um, these these things that were wrong about the society you were living in.
Yeah, there was a lot of. I didn't report about this or any personal event like that, but those are the events I think forced me to think about the society or question the society that we live in, like why that happens to us, why this happens, or why this exists in any way, and that really increased my interest for media, and I started to work for I work for TV, I work for newspaper, and you, like you mentioned, BBC was the last part of my journalism, or I think, say, media work, other than cinema. Um, Before BBC, I had worked with national dailies in Kathmandu, and I had already realized that I had to move to film. So in 2004, 5, I had left a job in Nepal Samachar Patra as a text editor, a reporter, and had joined Srivitar Sherpa, a director, to assist his film in Karma. So BBC came 2 years after that, in 2007, when BBC was trying to do, looking for people to do radio dramas. That came as a turning point for my life, which also gave me a platform to learn and explore, refine my storytelling skills, know my country better, because it allowed us to travel and explore. We were working with non-actors. We were making dramas on current affairs. So we'd go to villages, cast like non-actors, and work with their stories, improvise the drama, record and edit, and bring every week we produce 2 episodes of drama. And that really forced us to practice our storytelling and explore. One of the techniques that I learned then, improvising, I still use in cinema. And additionally, what it happened was, like 2009, we became best non-English output in the whole BBC, also best team of the year. And that really gave me a courage that I could do something in cinema.
Yes, I've seen that. I saw a clip of that, and I also rewatched a couple of your features. And Highway is one of them I rewatched recently, and saw that the actors there were improvising for the most part. So that's something that you started using first with BBC, right?
Yeah, I started using that from BBC. I worked for BBC from 2007 to 2010. And I was also lucky to have a partner who was also interested in cinema and theater storytelling. And in 2010, we decided together that I would leave my full-time career and job, and we start a company to start making our own films. By the time we had done 2 short films, while in BBC, I did my first short called Threshold Socket, which became the opening film for Kathmandu International Mountain Festival in Kathmandu, and also traveled quite well for festivals. And then we did a short film called Puja for BBC itself. Um, so in 2010, I ended my 3-year career with BBC to start my one production company.
Okay. And one of the things I noticed rewatching a couple of the films is how strong your women characters are. And I'm sure other people have said this to you. So Threshold is a film about women. It's basically two women main characters. And then in Highway, I think the women characters are at least as strong and prominent as the male characters. And then again in White Sun, the main female character is again very strong, independent, and near the end of the movie, she's the one who manages to bring some assistance so that they can complete the cremation of the father. Where do these strong women characters come from? Is it again this idea of seeing how society treated women badly, or is it from some other personal experience that you had growing up?
I'm glad you brought this up, especially it didn't does not get talked a lot about in Nepal. Like I think only rarely a couple people notice it, and also like I started it mostly was subconsciously more than consciously, and then I started to realize what was I was doing it. I was actually editing a reel, my directing reel couple days ago, and was putting all the works together. And as I was joking like how all the films has have these female characters, and how my work looks gender motivated, like more gender focused. But I think inspirations I think comes from the of course how I grew up. Uh, because one of the first characters that I remember writing for BBC drama where I was exploring was Barmezia, which was inspired by my brother's wife, my uncle's first son's wife. I had a nice relationship with her, and we were communicating and like saying like in how Madhesh society women are treated. So that and that was the character that I was adapting in Choket with Barmezi Bali, which is a female character, the female lead in the Choket. So this all came through, like even the character in White Sun on a highway was inspired by real life. That has impacted on me. One thing, once I realized I started to do it deliberately, was my muscle films has one character called Puja. Hinduism like to say that there is we respect it because we really respect women. That's why we puja them. But in reality, if you say like, how do we pray for God? Where do we keep the God? It's like we keep the God in the walls. We start and put the statues of God or pictures of God. And what that means is that God never gets to talk to us. We put in certain place in our home, and God never gets to question us. We come and do fasting for them, or we offer them something, and that's feels like equivalent of like how we treat women in our society. We want a dutiful wives. We want a dutiful daughter who does not question,
Yes.
doesn't ask for anything. Yeah.
Yeah, and certainly some of your main characters do question, and they have strong voices, and that leads me to something else I was thinking about. I know that currently you're doing what's called the Biratnagar Film Workshop. If I'm not mistaken, it's an 8-week long workshop that's probably about halfway or just a little more than halfway finished now.
Yeah, we are. I think we have our fifth class tomorrow.
Okay, and one of the things I noticed when I was looking for information about it was that a description of the workshop, I think maybe I saw this on Instagram, called it an initiative to explore and nurture conscious voices in Nepali cinema. And that really hit me because it goes along with this idea of shining a light on things that could be improved in society, things that aren't working, racism, the treatment of women, etc. So my question is, I mean, for you, does cinema have to have a social mission? Is it always more than entertainment?
Maybe I'm coming from a background with journalism, and for me, always felt like cinema is not the only entertainment. It could be entertainment, the medium, I think. And as much as I get exposure of European cinema or even Asian cinemas like Ozu or Kurosawa, or even in India, Ray, uh, the films or something like if you talk about West here in US, Spike Lee making a film felt cinema can do much more than entertainment. If cinema is stronger of a society, if art is stronger of a society, you see a difference in the society itself. In Nepal, because we're dominated by Indian cinema, especially the Bollywood cinema, not even the better part of Indian cinema, uh, what and our schools, our colleges, universities still ignores cinema, and we don't get to talk about cinema in our dinner tables. We don't talk in the families. We don't critically look at the cinema, and that really, I think, feels reflects that in our daily lives as well. I think cinema can do much more than that if consciously made. So one of the reasons that and I got into cinema was that allows me to question or create a question the society that I live in, reflect on the society that I live in. Not that I want, my main goal is to entertain people. I'm not an entertainer. I'm here to ask questions. I'm here to explore a society that we are living in, if it makes sense anyway. That's my main mission for being in film. My main motivation was that it gave me a power to really recreate the experience uh, and bring it to people. So that allows or like encourages them to questions about the society we live in.
And so, do you feel that that power you have is greater than the power you had when you were writing for the newspaper or doing Radio Nepal? I mean, does this medium with the visual part of the medium give you even more influence?
Ideally, I do feel it gives more influence than journalism had given me, because journalism is all about information, providing information. What cinema can do is create an experience. It's one thing to hear about what happened in Chitwan National Park and how uh, Japan's house were burned. Another thing is to be in that village and watch it, what happened. Cinema can create that latter part. It can make you transport you to that village and force you to watch what happened to Japans and make you question if it is the really the society that we want.
That's a good explanation, and that leads me to this next question, which is, you've been making movies now for about 10 years, and as you said, you want to raise issues, you want to raise questions, you want to provoke discussion and dialogue, and your movies have been very successful, getting more and more successful each one. Do you feel like you're having that impact that you set out to create? Are people having discussions? I mean, I'm sure people come up to you and talk to you at festivals and that kind of place. But do you feel like you and maybe other filmmakers and artists are starting to have a impact on society as a whole?
It's hard to see in black and white. One thing is not, I think we have seen impact in last 10 years, had changed a lot. 10 years ago, or let's say 8 years ago, when I released a highway for first time in Nepal, and 4 years later when I released White Sun, I could see the difference in our audience or see the society and how we converse about the film. The tone was different. During highway, if I was in a street, I could have been beaten because people were there was huge number of people who were angry about it. The tolerance had increased by White Sun, but same time been saying that one thing is noticeable is that for someone like me or Minbam or someone else coming and making a film, it's making a film for one film in 4 years or 5 years. We cannot make film every year. We don't have any financing in Nepal, any support in Nepal. We have to do another job or be in a different country where you can sustain to continue making films. That was the discussion that we were having yesterday, also with our head of our film board, new head of our film development board, saying like how you could support art. Like you talk about Canada, like Marty, where you come from. Also talk about where I'm living in the U.S. or European countries. Art is or cinema is always supported by state, or like state aggressively promotes debate or discussion. That is not happening in Nepal. One of the reasons that we started the workshop feeling that it's not enough only us making films. So we need to nurture other people. We need to nurture young people to bring different stories from different parts, and consciously, not only nurturing only one community of people, because it's like really simple to say, or like not say, same is not the right word. What I think say, I feel sad, like saying like we don't have even a strong female director still now. We don't have any director from Dalits community. We don't have any director other from like a strong coming from Madheshi community. These voices are important, and we're doing nothing about bringing those community be able to share their stories. So our workshop in one way is for ourselves. Like three of us came together, me and my wife Asa and Bhaskar Gautam in Kathmandu, supported by a organization called North South Collective in Viratnagar, where Bhaskar is the chairperson, to do this pre-workshop where we what we plan is like take 12 fellows every summer and nurture them for a year, help them to do their first film, and hopefully in a couple of years we can bring a couple new directors. We're not overly ambitious, yes, but we're hoping that every workshop brings at least a couple directors that are prominent, that continues making films, questioning their society we live in.
Okay, that certainly sounds like a good objective for that workshop, and it will be a challenge, I'm sure, also to succeed. But best of luck with that. I wanted to ask you, looking at your film, the last film, White Sun, and how much the theme of the war, the just ended in the movie civil war with the Maoist, between the Maoists and the state, how prominent that was in the movie. Do you think that Nepal can move ahead without discussing the war, the aftermath of the war, and the issues of the war? Because it seems to me, as someone who's lived here now, who came here just at the end of the war, and then went away and came back again now, 3 years ago, 4 years ago, that there's a tendency people just want to go on in society as a whole. There just doesn't seem to be any consciousness, any desire to revisit the war. I mean, do you think that it would be possible to kind of suppress it and move on to better things, or is there going to be a need to really rip off the band-aid and look what's underneath?
Watson was an exploration to see what were the silver linings of the war, how the society had changed, how our villages have changed, and if the scar is still permanent there. There was we were trying to look and document in certain way that even from couple years, several years from now, we can look back on that time. Because the narrative of Kathmandu right now is that uh, war did war was total wrong and war happened for no reason. And our society, like you said, uh, I think especially like the elites in Kathmandu who controls the media, trying to push one kind of narrative, like we don't question, like we not don't question our national army who killed more than Maoist. And we don't question our Nepal police who, like in recent year, killed more than 100 people in Madhesh areas for the protest. So impunity, like you can do anything and you don't get punished, has to end, or at least we have to look into it, like and a culture of like it's not only about the war, also after what happened after that. So it's something that we should be talking about, discussing about, and how we should be moving and making a just society. I think we're ignoring it, and it's largely also because of the narrative that we create through our media's narrative that we create, or places that very little places that we have for discussion.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, after White Sun, which was a big commercial success, did did you have anyone from Nepal uh, come to you and say this was a great entry point into these issues, and I really want to do something to continue the work that you did in White Sun? Like you've now lifted the lid off some of these issues and the legacy of the war. Let's try to lift it up even further.
Uh, sadly, I didn't. Like, I even attempted to have screenings in universities, having wider screenings in villages to have a support for that screening, at least to have discussions around it. Uh, Even trying myself, I did not have that success. Like, even like when I requested a school, they would reply in saying kind of like they're trying to do a favor to me. And you spend 4 or 5 years making a film, you cannot spend another 5 years or 10 years promoting the same film without being paid. I didn't get a single request.
Well, that's disappointing to hear. I mean, hopefully, as you said, society had changed between your first full length feature, Highway, and then this one 4 years later. So let's hope that by the time your new movie comes out, things again will have advanced, and there will be a different kind of reaction if you approach people and offer to have screenings like that.
No, I was saying like I hear the pandemic has uh, interesting silver lining, the impact in Nepal that many people were home and they were watching films. I was surprised that 4 years ago when we released White Sun, we had reviews like uh, film, Samvedan, Samvedanshil film cinema on Samvedanshil subject, like a sensitive, unsensitive film on a sensitive subject, where discussion where people were mad about it. But 4 years later, I was watching couple analysis made during the pandemic who were really appreciating of the cinema and analyzing every bit of it. So I can say that I had changed. I saw even Congresswoman Representative retweeting a pirated link of White Sun that she liked it. So I did see like
That's the best. That's the best
yeah,
vote of
yeah,
confidence you can get.
yeah, yeah.
Your
So I was
MP
like,
doing something illegal to promote your film.
yeah. But I think I was happy, like at least like that generation of people, that group of people, even watching pirated links and talking about the film. There was a lot of conversation in Twitter happening, in Facebook happening around during pandemic that they had watched a pirated copy of the film. They might not have watched it if I had approached earlier with a link giving myself. So I do realize that change is happening slowly, and maybe pandemic has a silver lining at that. I hope like we soon realize that cinema is not only the medium of entertainment. Uh, it can have a better impact in the society if we did consciously uh, use it.
Okay, okay. Let me ask you another question. You're, I think it's fair to say that you're known as, uh, at least outside of Nepal, you're known as a Nepali director, and this very accomplished Nepali director, and the Nepali director who made this and who made that. And I'm wondering how you feel about that, always being labeled the director, almost a representative of a country, where at the same time you have a lot of reasons to be critical, right?
No, I think Nepal is my country and where I was born, so I don't really have difficulty on being called Nepali director. I think Madhesh is one reason, and where I belong to Madhesh. I come from that ethnicity, and that I always be. At the same time, also a national Nepali national. So I don't find difficulty in that, and I shouldn't be. There is no reason, I think. And but it becomes difficult, like when people try to outside expect you to be the ambassador of the country wherever you go, and screen your film, and they want to know more about Nepal, and they start questioning about the country and situation, and when you have not very much good thing to talk about. Uh, that sometimes creates complexity, but also I have seen majority of the positive uh, feedback, like there was even though they see the fault lines, Most of the people were interested to visit the country and want to know about the country, know more about the country. I have several messages where someone has watched the film and gone to Nepal and wrote me back after again.
Right. Okay. So fair enough. Then that's if someone asked me about being a Canadian journalist, I would probably have a similar answer. Right. You can be
Yeah,
critical about your country, but you still are of that country, and it's your home.
it's your home and you're born there. I think that's something that never can be changed. Like even maybe one day I may get citizenship of another country or I have a passport somewhere else. But even then, something that won't change is that where your birthplace, right, where you're born, where you grew up, with the society that you lived in, and that informs a lot of things that we do and what we are today. I feel like.
Definitely. Yeah, I agree with that. Do you ever feel about being a Nepali director and one of the most internationally well-known Nepali directors? I mean, do you feel that pressure that you are representing Nepal? I mean, do you feel like your next movie has to do better than the last one did? Because that's the trajectory so far, right? I mean, your each movie has been a little better received internationally. Do you think the next one also would it be a failure if it didn't go up another step?
I don't feel really like a pressure of being a director from a certain one country, like being a Nepali director, that I have to do another film, and that should carry Nepal more larger. More, I think I'm focused on my personal experience or my personal voice, what I want to talk about it, and I'm more concerned about how good I can that bring that uh, on a screen, what kind of experience that I could create. And of course, like any filmmaker, from one to another film wants to be more mature, want to do better work, but I don't think that is always possible. It's one film to another is a different film, a different context, and you are different. Like 5 years ago, what I was, I'm a different right now. I'm not the same person. We're evolving every time, every month, or every day. And even if I did White Sun right now or a highway right now, would be do differently. These are the things like I think about, like I'm answering right, but I do not feel that pressure. But sometimes I also think about that uh, conversation that we were also having yesterday, that there should be more films from Nepal. There should be distributed more. Even for myself, like Highway was released in 2 countries and did only some digital release internationally. Wison had a theatrical release in about 15 countries, uh, was reported and reviewed internationally. uh, I would want more from the next film. I would want the films. I would be happy if it is released theatrically more than those 15 countries that Watson had a theatrical release in good theatrical release in the U.S. or something like new territory like China or European countries. Or we also have access to Gulf countries. Uh, so my hope as a filmmaker is always to grow larger for sure, but not because that I feel pressure that I'm the only filmmaker coming from Nepal and I should do this. Gladly, we also have other people making film from Nepal. Min Mam did really well. Festivals. He is doing new film as well. There's a new,
Sorry,
I think,
what's his second name? It's Min, right? Min, and his second name?
Min Bahadur Bham.
Okay.
He's from Karnal region, Mugu. And we have Pooja Gurung and Vibhusan coming with new feature. They're also, I think they have shot half of the film. Their short film called Dadyag did really well in the festival circuit. Uh, and there are other couple people who are in process of doing their first feature.
Are you ever surprised at how quickly you've succeeded? For me, looking at your career, like I said, 10 years more or less, you've done now two full length features and you had a couple short movies. Each one is having a better reaction, better received internationally. Did you expect it to go this well?
Of course, I did not plan or didn't know much about it because when I was doing highway, I didn't know how my interest market functions even and how festival works. But I did have a dream that I was feeling that should premiere at one of the major festival. That is the only way you can get exposure for the cinema that you really wanted, and, and that can allow you some distribution internationally. So Highway taught me that, especially Danny Glover and Jocelyn Barnes in New York, the Liberty Films support really helped me to get that, and which they also produced my second feature, White Sun, learning from a highway and coming back after that, doing a lab like in Toronto Film Festival, or Berlinale Talents, or going to Cannes Film Festivals, Atelier program, Cine Foundation program. That allowed my exposure and the maturity you can see even in White Sun. And I think that will be more I hope my third will be more mature than the second one, but also sometimes I'm scared because it's more personal. It's back into my own community where I was born, and looking at the Madhesh protest uh, of 2015, where more than 50 people were killed. A lot of even 7 or 8 policemen were also killed. Looking beyond the reason of the violent protest and why people were protesting like that. So exploring that, exploring the race or gender issues in our society, especially racial issues that I don't think even in Nepal, we realize that we have racism. Outside Nepal, I think no one knows that Nepal is a country that goes through racism. And this is something international issue right now. So I want to explore that in the cinema, the question of nationality, question of racism or gender in my next film.
The movie is going to be called The Sky Is Mine, right?
That's a working title right now. Made sense, but
Okay.
that's the title that we have now.
Okay. Okay. And I saw this blurb, I guess you call it on, I think on your website, social and racial inequality, suppression of women, and the advancement of feminism are explored in a pressure cooker political thriller. It sounds like Deepak Rauniyar exploring some of the hidden negative parts of Nepal, but kind of on steroids with action. And is it an attempt to link an issue based movie with a more kind of fast moving story? Would that be a way to describe it?
Yeah, what did happen is like with Highway and White Sun, we did have really good festival success, and also White Sun got released to about 15 countries theoretically, which had never happened to for Nepali films earlier, because we didn't used to get theatrical releases in this country, and we had reviews in the newspaper like New York Times, BBC. We got the exposure widely. That also helped my career. But meantime, like it's hard to make a film for 4 or 5 years and not make any money. And so, and also like one other thing is like even in Nepal, it did not reach to like because Nepal does not have alternative way of screening. It's only the commercial cinema that you're competing with Hollywood or Bollywood. It's hard to exist in the cinema for a long time. We got opportunity to release twice, but both times it didn't last more than 2 weeks. So a lot of people didn't get to watch it, and a lot of people still complain about it. But we don't have alternative mediums to release in Nepal. Release in Nepal. With this, Sky is my attempt to look at the genre of cinema, explore the genre in social issue backdrop. So, to give you example, would be something like Spike Lee has been trying for a long time, has done for a long time. something like Akira Kurosawa used to do quite earlier in time. So something like that style. What I was trying to explore is a police detective cinema, but that explore the social issues. So it's a film about a deputy superintendent who is transfer promoted and transferred to Madhesh region in the midst of protest. She's light skinned, but meantime also a female who has to fight because in Nepal police, female are less than 5%. So she has to fight to get that position. She is herself a minority in the department, but she has a blind spot. She does not understand the racism, and she's the everyone like all of others, us that went through the same school. So she comes to this place where she does not understand the reason of protest, why people have to protest like that, why this is that violent. She doesn't sympathize it. But once she's forced to go beyond her comfort zone into the society, what we see is how she developed of understanding it, uh, of the depth of the society, complexity of the problem, understanding, seeing Madhesh from different angle, different light. And as an audience, my hope is that we also see something that what she sees from her eyes, we look to society from her perspective, but in a setting of a genre film where we also can attract a larger population of the country, so more people comes to see it because it's important also subject wise that people get to see that can create if they understand the issue that Madhisis are going through. I'm hoping that can create some kind of bridge between the societies.
Right. Well, I'm certainly not surprised that your lead character is going to be a woman, um,
Yeah,
based on the fact.
actually, all three lead characters are female.
Oh, all three in this film.
Yeah,
Even more interesting then, and certainly the timing is good in terms of what's happening around the world, as you mentioned, right? So the Black Lives Matter protests that started in the U.S. and have spread globally,
around the world. Yeah.
around the world. Now Dalit lives matter, even here in Nepal and India, obviously. And there's a lot of talk on Nepali social media about these issues. So timeliness, it's the perfect time to do a movie like this, I think.
Yeah, for me it was also like it is my third feature, and for me it was finally a time to get back to home because I didn't feel confident as a as a first feature to deal with this subject that I grew up with. So after doing Highway and White Sun, Highway did touch that subject a bit, was kind of soft plot, which some people get it, some people don't. It's about a band coming from Elam and how the other uses the band to arrive at Kathmandu and abandons them. It was reflection of the Madhesi politics and how after Madhesi movement, Madhesis were used to get was help for others to get into government, and then they were abandoned. The whole issues were abandoned. So there was a reflection of that. But I think this is coming back to the home and dealing with something directly and more focused way.
I know you said before that living in New York helps you be more objective about Nepal and what's happening in Nepal. But at the same time, this movie, because it's about your place, your culture, if I can use that word, is going to be also more personal. So, I mean, do you feel good about doing something that's closer to your own experience, or are you also a bit worried about not having that distance from the way you have with the other ones?
Um, yeah, like I said earlier, like because it's being a personal, I'm also scared about it dealing with. But I had already been. like pushed it for so long. So I think it feels like the right time. But at the same time, also I do have some distance because I'm not living there right now. I'm further away, and I can see get involved in day-to-day Black Lives Matter protest like thing and reflect the things that were happening there and see in the broader way, not be only subjective to the what was happening to me personally. So it have the combination of both, like on the distance and being able to look objectively and also being personal.
Right. And your fear, if I can call it that, is it are you worried that Nepalis will see this and think, you've gone too far, you've exaggerated things, you're shaking a hornet's nest, you're bringing up all of these divisive issues. Is that your fear, or is it that the movie just won't be as attractive to the audience?
I think it's mixed. One thing is like it's really hard to do a film about your something very close to you. I think start losing the objectiveness, and that's I think one fear that I have, and also like it because that it took me so long year to write it. But I feel good about the script that we have now. We're finalizing it, and I do think that it could create like other could feel like that I'm exaggerating or creating bringing the trouble, dividing the society. But that's not the intention for me, and I think that's always come from the elite who holds the power. So I'm not really worried about them. My aim is to reach as much as possible people to show this film, which I feel will create the bridges between the communities, make people understand each other better, uh, rather than creating like divide.
So do you think Nepalis are more, in a sense, mature, more ready for this kind of movie now than they were 4 years ago when White Sun came out?
I feel so. Like or 10 years ago when Highway came out, 8 years ago when Highway came out, I think society has changed a lot. But also like I'm looking in like I'm not making a film about angry protesters directly from the protesters' perspective. I'm looking. This is a film about a hill woman coming to play and learning things, and her beliefs getting challenged. So still, I'm not doing a film. I don't think that is a time still to do a film. It's totally on a angry Madheshi character and bringing into society. I think that will still be pushed, not watched. So I'm still trying to look at the society, my one society, trying to look at it from the external point of view is because it's inspired by my marriage, inspired by how Asa and I got together, and Asa's understanding about the society that I come from was different, and how we started living together, and how Asa was forced to interact with other things, and how her perspective changed over time. So inspired by that, Asa being the inspiration, and she is the one who will play the character. So I feel like she can bring her own real experiences to the character.
Okay, well, you just opened a big door there for me. Can you are you comfortable saying more about that and about Asha and your relationship, where she's from, where you're from, and how there might have been some tension at the beginning?
Asa was born in Khotan, which is a hill, and she grew up in Dharan. And now her family lives in Moran, which is close to Biratnagar. It's a district. Birat is also a district. Moran, still a part of Moran district. But this is a village called Belbari.
So she, sorry,
We got
she comes from a, fair to say, she comes from a hill community.
Yes, she comes from a hill
Okay.
community, and she used to be a theater artist, and she was doing theater when we got into a relationship, and started to live together. Uh, we did not have personally like tension about being Madhesh or party among us, because I think we were both artists and we had lived in different life and we understand the subject. But for her, coming from Hill, who lived in the Ran, close to Viratnagar, or let's say Narwa or Iteri, she still did not have a deeper understanding about the trouble that we go through on a complex society the Madhesis has, which I have seen in several of my party friends. Like someone grew up in Hetoda would not know about Amleng guns.
Would not
I
know.
have a
Sorry,
friend,
would not know about what?
Amleng guns, like a couple of kilometers further away.
Okay, okay, I see. So one, because one is almost exclusively hill or pahadi, as it's called, hill
Yeah,
culture,
yeah,
and the other one is Madheshi culture, and there's
yeah.
a they're close together, but they never meet in a way.
They never meet, like they will never interact, or the schooling they get is like saying that we are Indian immigrants living in their land. So they, like our schools, like never talked about us. Our course book never really mentions us. Like I don't know now new courses, like if they had any chapters that talks about us. But when I was going to school, it never mentioned. We only talked about Tapas who fought for us in the war for Nepal, or Gagan Singh, or someone else, or how Gorkha kings were a superhero. We did not talk about the complexity of society. So I don't blame them. But that's the reality. And you do not understand the complexity of the society. So uh, when Asa and I got together, because, and we start, like for her, it was totally a new world when she started to explore and we started getting interacted with. And because she's being my partner or wife, she had to get into fight every day, like every time, because like someone close to you get insulted, you can bear, and that burden came on her. Because for me, I was growing up like that for long years, so I was used to it. As I used to drive, she had a motorbike, and I would sit her in back. Uh, I have been arrested for carrying a laptop computer in Tabatali, and the police officer wanted a bill for me to show the bill, the proof that is mine, because he thought that I stole it. And so I also had to get into a fight for that. So I think those are the experiences. Is I think inspires the cinema.
Yeah, I understand that, and listening to you talk about that reminds me about so many stories I've heard recently about the U.S. and Black Lives Matter, right? And how people are being treated differently because of their skin color. In Canada, where I come from, Indigenous people, same thing. There's a recent issue that's been discussed where Indigenous people go to the hospital with some sort of illness, and the medical staff just assume from the symptoms that they're drunk, that they've been drinking, because they have this stereotype that Indigenous people drink a lot, and so they don't give them the proper treatment. And people have even died because of this, because of this stereotype, right? And the way
Yeah,
people treat you. So yeah, I can understand how she would have reacted and wanted to protect you, and how outraged she would feel that you were being treated that way. And the same time, for you, it's just everyday experience, right?
yeah. For me, it's like everyday experience, and I think I had learned to ignore it. But being her with her, she started to notice it, or that forced me to notice it again. So this film is kind of like attempt to seeing life from her perspective. Someone who did not know about the racism, someone who did not understand that there is racism, coming from outside, and when forced to that life, how she reacts to it. By the end of the film, if she has develops the understanding there is a problem. I think we're not going to change anything from this film, but what our attempt is to at least to make people understand there is problem, something that we need to deal with.
Well, I've said it myself, and a lot of people are saying that this pandemic time is a time for regeneration, reimagining, doing things differently, right? And
Yeah,
so it seems that again seems another reason to be doing this kind of movie.
yeah. I really believe in the philosophy of like one of the great filmmaker, French filmmaker Robert Bresson, make visible what without you might perhaps never have been seen. That's been my motto, to do something, expose something that might perhaps never be made if we don't do it. Never be exposed if we don't do it. Because if we didn't do it, I don't think in many years anyone else could come and do it immediately.
Right. So in a way, the two of you and Asha, you have this great experience, this personal experience. You're the perfect people to do this film.
Yeah, because it's come from our, it's derived from our experience. Most of our films been like that, like either it's Circuit or Highway or Puja or White Sun. The basics has driven from our personal experiences. Our motto has been to expose something that uh, we experience or won't be exposed if we didn't do it. Yeah, something that you have personal relation to it, not you're not just assuming it, not just collecting it from someone else, but something that no one else will do it if you didn't do it. Because I don't know if you noticed, but White Sun is a single film at that time. It talks about the silver lining of the war and the complexity of the society and why why the war happened in meantime. We had several other films being made on that reason. That time reflecting, and I have yet to see any film that talked about the complexity of the war.
Right. Okay. And for the new one, The Sky Is Mine, tentative title, has the casting been done yet or
We have not finalized the casting. One is confirmed. It's Asa
right, okay.
will play the lead. And but we have other two Madheshi strong cast. Secondly, a similar officer but a junior in post of same age as Asa or with Arjun Anger that we still are in process of casting. We also have another female lead that need to be casted. Uh, and another person which is confirmed also is Daya Hangrai, the character that also actor that works in my Highway and Watson. He will have another role, character as well, but this time is not the one of the main lead.
Is this a bigger budget movie? Does it require more people, more equipment, more everything?
Yeah, budget-wise, also like from a Highway to Hudson was expensive, and this one very more expensive because it has the backdrop of now also being forced to rethink about it is that because of the pandemic, like how the situation will go, it also has a huge cast crowd and backdrop because it deals the protest. So we're talking about thousands of people on the street. So we also need to figure out how to shoot that.
And you said next, now you're thinking shooting next, so this time next year?
Could be this time next year, or could be. I think if everything goes well, we would try to shoot in something like late February or March. That's our target, 2021. But if a pandemic pushes badly in Nepal, then our target would be something like summer next year.
Yeah, and I guess now being monsoon might not be the best time also.
Yeah, so at least like a month or 2 months before this time. But it also depends on the financing. If we can complete the financing by then. So this is also time to explore like what really the future would look like and what we really be doing. And I don't know, like in 6 months, if we're doing the same world or the world look different. But we're hopeful because we have just had a very good French company come on board who will also be the distributor in France. So we're adding a new country in our map to have a secure distribution sale before the film.
That sounds positive. And I saw you also won some sort of funding. Was it from Italy or very recently some Euro?
Yeah, we won the inaugural, like the first co-production award by Torino Film Lab. We were competing, like we were in the final. We were competing against Brazil and Argentina. Nepal was the winner for 50,000 euro, which is I think also again gives us a positive feeling that the script is working and we can stand in the international market.
Okay, well, best of luck. Uh,
Thank
I
you.
really hope that it all works out, even though it's going to look different. We know that, but that you can accomplish what you're setting out to do. I'm really looking forward to seeing that film when it comes out. It's really good to hear that your movie is coming along and that you're active creatively. I see you're also from your website, you're producing as well as working on your own movies. So that's great. I wish you all the best on this movie and in your other projects. And I really want to thank you for taking the time. I took a lot of your time, but I really appreciate you doing this, Deepak. Thanks a lot.
Thank you, Marty. Thank you for creating this opportunity and also to having this conversation like you, this with you. Thank you so much.